There's something beneath the surface of Mars. Not rock, not ice. And according to internal documents, NASA found it, then went silent. The question is, why? And more importantly, if it's not natural, who put it there? Chapter 1. The rumbling beneath Mars is quiet. Too quiet. That was the first real conclusion when NASA's InSight lander touched down on the Martian surface in November 2018. Unlike Earth, where the ground trembles daily, Mars was supposed to be geologically dated planet with no tectonic activity, no volcanic rumblings, no real movement, a frozen desert world, still and silent. But then, the ground started talking. InSight was designed to listen to the red planet, its most important tool, a sensitive seismometer built to detect even the faintest vibrations beneath the surface. Scientists expected to catch occasional Marsquakes, mild tremors from ancient stresses cracking the crust, and they did, but they also caught something else, a low, rhythmic pulse. At first, it seemed like noise. Instruments malfunctioned all the time. Dust storms can interfere. Solar radiation can mess with signals. But this was different. The pulses were clear, regular, and weird. They didn't follow the pattern of natural quakes. They came in intervals, almost like a beat. Some were so subtle that only InSight could detect them. Others were strong enough to shake the lander's legs. NASA called them seismic anomalies, but internally, some engineers weren't so diplomatic. Something's moving down there, one technician said during a mission briefing, and it doesn't sound natural. To be fair, Mars isn't as dead as we once thought. It has landslides. It creaks from temperature shifts. Its crust can still snap from long-forgotten but these explanations didn't quite fit what InSight was picking up. The rhythms weren't random. Some even repeated like footsteps echoing from deep underground. That's when the digital assistant chimed in. Maybe someone's doing squats down there. Squats powerful enough to shake an entire planet. It was a joke, kind of. But it also pointed to something real. A pattern. One signal in particular caught attention, a deep frequency vibration that pulsed once every 26 hours. Not constant, not chaotic, just steady. Planetary scientists scratched their heads. Nothing in Mars geology could explain such a consistent signal. It didn't line up with temperature cycles or wind patterns. It just existed. So they started modeling the source. If the pulse was traveling through rock, its shape should change as it passed through different layers. But the signal stayed clean. That suggested it wasn't bouncing through solid material. It was traveling through something hollow or structured. That's when the whispers started. Underground chambers, cavities, maybe lava tubes. That was the official line. Lava tubes do exist on Mars, remnants of ancient volcanoes, but none had ever produced rhythmic seismic activity like this. Not on Earth, and definitely not here. Then someone asked the question out loud. What if it's not geological? Now, let's pause for a second. It's easy to spiral into conspiracy. But the truth is, NASA doesn't jump to wild conclusions. Their job is to eliminate the impossible before entertaining the improbable. But when multiple independent readings, vibrational, acoustic, magnetic, start to point in the same direction, it becomes harder to write them off. And yet that's exactly what happened. Over the next several months, NASA's public updates about InSight became noticeably vague. Technical blog posts stopped mentioning the anomalies. Diagrams removed certain data points, and when asked directly, project scientists dodged the topic. We're still interpreting the signal, one said in a live. It's likely just subsurface cooling. Subsurface cooling, sir. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, internal chatter painted a different picture. Engineers privately referred to the anomaly as the drummer, because that's what it felt. Like a giant hand, softly tapping the inside of the planet, over and over. The strangest part, it didn't matter where InSight looked. The pulse was always coming from the same direction, beneath the Utopia Planitia region. That area was already known for volcanic history, but this wasn't volcanic. It was something else. One geophysicist ran a simulation and came to an unsettling result. The signal didn't scatter the way it should have if it were echoing through rock. Instead, it behaved like it was resonating through a chamber, a very large one, possibly artificial. Now, before you grab your tinfoil hat, let's be clear. No one officially said it was artificial, but when people who study rocks for a living start using terms like structural symmetry and resonant acoustics, the conversation naturally shifts. Or maybe it's just a massive underground picnic, complete with 200-year-old Martian jazz drummers. And then came the weirdest part. In early 2020, a set of seismic readings from InSight mysteriously disappeared from NASA's public archives. No explanation. When reporters asked about it, the agency blamed a technical error, but insiders knew the files had been flagged. Internally, the data had been classified as non-essential research, a convenient label used when you want something forgotten. But why forget it? Because the deeper you go into this story, the clearer it becomes. Someone found something that didn't fit, something that forced a choice: either explain it to the public or lock it in a drawer and pretend it never happened. That's what brings us back to the beginning. There's something beneath the surface of Mars. Not rock, not ice. Something that pulses, something hollow, something that might be listening. And if the rumors are true, this was just the first clue, because InSight wasn't the only mission listening. Others saw more, and what came next was even stranger. Chapter 2. Buried Structures, or Buried Truths. If the seismic signals from InSight were the sound of something strange beneath Mars, then the next piece of the puzzle came from something more visual. High above the planet, orbiting silently since 2006, is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO for short. One of its tools, SHARAD, is basically ground-penetrating radar. It beams radio waves down through the crust and measures what bounces back. It's designed to scan for underground ice, old riverbeds, and other hidden features. And in 2015, it scanned something unexpected. The area, Utopia, a massive, flat basin that once may have held an ancient ocean. The same region where China would eventually land its SHARAD rover. But before any wheels touched the surface, SHARAD detected something beneath it, something that didn't behave like natural rock. Instead of random, chaotic reflections, SHARAD picked up something with order. The radar waves bounced off several layers, stacked almost too neatly. Some reflected at perfect 90-degree angles, some patterns even repeated like ribs or struts. Geologists at first assumed it was layered sediment, but sediment doesn't form in geometric grids. It doesn't line up this perfectly, not unless something or someone made it that way. That's when the internal nickname appeared. The chamber, a series of aligned voids, deep, evenly spaced, like rooms or tunnels. Not proof of intelligent design, but certainly weird enough to raise eyebrows, and maybe raise blood pressure. Or it's just a giant Martian potato cellar. Ever think of that? Only if Martian potatoes grow in precise rectangles. At first, the findings were passed around quietly. A few teams from JPL ran simulations. They tried modeling natural geological processes that could form such shapes. The results, unconvincing. No known process, volcanic, glacial, or impact-related, produced anything close. And yet, when asked publicly, NASA shrugged it off. Radar noise, they said. But the internal files told a different story. In a leaked email from a SHARAD team member never meant for public eyes, a single line stood out. We don't know if it's natural or artificial, but it shouldn't be there. That's a strong statement, especially from a team trained to only speak in percentages, probabilities, and geological terms. So why wasn't it front-page news? Simple. It got buried. Literally. The data was filed under secondary anomalies and moved into what's known unofficially inside NASA as the dead data zone. It's not a real department, it's more of a digital drawer, a place where findings go when they're too weird to explain but too real to delete. And it's not just SHARAD. Other missions, Mars Odyssey, even older orbiters like Mars Express have picked up strange subsurface echoes in the same region. But none of it made it into public briefings, just vague mentions of density anomalies and reflective inconsistencies. In other words, a lot of strange data and not a lot of answers. The pattern became clear. Find something weird, can't explain it, lock it up, move on. But the silence didn't stop amateur researchers from digging, metaphorically at least. A group of independent analysts began collecting all available SHARAD scans and applying new filtering techniques. They removed the interference, enhanced the returns, and lined up overlapping data. What they found matched earlier rumors: long, repeating voids under the Martian crust, shaped like tubes, some curved, some straight, one over 2 kilometers wide. Of course, NASA dismissed these citizen findings. They cited data misinterpretation and software artifacts, which is radar interpretation is tricky business. But still, you'd think they'd at least be curious. Instead, the topic got colder than the Martian poles. But why? Why ignore it? Maybe it's bureaucracy. Maybe they truly believe it's nothing. Or maybe, and this is where things get interesting, they've already explored it and just didn't tell anyone. Let's rewind. In the late 1990s, before SHARAD even existed, another instrument called Mars Orbiter Laser Altimeter was scanning Mars' surface for height variations. In the Utopia region, it found small, unnatural-looking depressions, uniform pits spaced too evenly across a section of terrain, almost like vents or access points. No one followed up. No drills, no missions, no robotic excavators sent to check them out. Just more silence. Now, let's be honest. Space missions are expensive. NASA can't chase every mystery, but ignoring the most structured underground anomaly ever seen on another planet, that's a choice. Maybe they know what's down there and decided not to say hello. If that's true, we're not avoiding danger. We're pretending it's not breathing under our feet. Even more curious, in 2021, NASA quietly shifted its focus away from Utopia Planitia. Despite years of interest, future landers were the official reason: unsuitable terrain. But that's odd. Utopia is flat, wide, and perfect for landing. So what really changed? One theory says the area was deemed unstable, possibly due to hollow underground structures. Another theory: someone told them not to go back. Now, we're drifting into speculation here. But when multiple missions quietly avoid one region, despite evidence of artificial-like geometry below, it's hard not to ask, what's really buried under Mars? Because at this point, we've seen the tremors, we've heard the rhythms, and now we've scanned the shapes. Something is down there, and if it's not natural who'd put it there, maybe it was an ancient Martian civilization, maybe it was something else entirely, or maybe, just maybe, it's something that hasn't woken up yet. Chapter 3: The Case of the Missing Report. By now, we've heard the tremors, we've seen the strange underground geometry, but there's one more signal that shook the team at NASA hand. It didn't come from the ground. It came from under the ground, and it was electromagnetic. In early 2023, a NASA-affiliated research group published a brief internal report, just a few pages long. It detailed something curious: recurring low-frequency electromagnetic pulses coming from beneath Mars' surface. Not lightning, not solar flares, and not interference. These were deep, rhythmic, low-hertz pulses happening at regular intervals. You might be thinking, so what? Planets have weird magnetic quirks all the time. Earth's magnetic field pulses from time to time. So does Jupiter. But Mars has no global magnetic field. It lost it billions of years ago. That's part of the reason its surface is so hostile to life. Without a magnetic shield, solar radiation bombards everything. So if Mars doesn't have a magnetic core anymore, what was pulsing? The report was labeled anomalous subsurface M readings, Utopia region, just like before Utopia. That same area again. One of the conclusions in the paper stood out. The observed pulses are not aligned with known environmental cycles. They suggest a periodic internal source. Let's break that down. Not solar wind. Something inside Mars was emitting electromagnetic signals at regular intervals, and then the report vanished. Within 48 hours, the document was removed from the internal access portal. Scientists who had downloaded it were asked to delete it. One engineer, who preferred to stay anonymous, leaked a redacted version to a small space science forum before it was scrubbed. In a private message, they explained, "We were told to drop it. They didn't want to fuel alien theories." Now, that sentence says a lot. Not just what was found, but why it was buried. NASA has always walked a fine line. They're a scientific agency, but they also depend on public funding and public trust. If word got out that deep below the surface of Mars, something was emitting repeated pulses aren't. The data showed signs of structure. The alien speculation would explode. The headlines would write themselves. And let's face it, NASA finds odd pulse on Mars quickly becomes NASA finds buried alien machine in the wrong hands. So, according to the leak, they shut it down. Quietly. No press conference. No update. Not even a footnote in a future paper. Just silence. Maybe it was just Martian jazz radio. Very low frequency. Very underground. In that case, someone's still pressing play down there. The funny thing is, this wasn't the first time something like this happened. Back in the early 2000s, another NASA mission picked up brief electromagnetic spikes near Mars' equator. At the time, it was blamed on instrument error. The data was flagged, forgotten, and filed away. But now, with this recent Utopia signal showing a consistent pattern, some researchers started wondering, what if none of those were mistakes? What if Mars has an active, pulsing source underground, not volcanic, not geological, but technological? To be clear, we don't have evidence of machines on Mars. There's no blinking light, no humming engine, but the pulse matches no known natural process on the planet. Its frequency, its shape, its repetition, it all suggests intent, or at least design. And here's where things get really strange. The leaked report included a spectral analysis of the signal. When plotted visually, it formed a sharp central band, flanked by symmetrical harmonics. That means the pulse wasn't just noise. It was structured, mathematically structured. Some described it as similar to a carrier signal in communication systems. So was it a transmission? You think someone's sending us a message? If they are, they've been on hold for a long time. Now, if you're wondering why NASA would suppress that kind of finding instead of shouting it from the rooftops, you're not alone. But think about it. What would you do if you found something pulsing from beneath another planet, something that might be artificial, but you can't explain? You've got two options. One, confirm it, which means mounting a new mission, spending billions, and opening the door to global panic. Two, bury it, and call it a fluke. Guess which one's cheaper? And here's the thing, we're not talking about a signal from space. Those get public attention. SETI monitors for those. But a signal from underground, that's far harder to detect, easy to hide, and easier to dismiss. Even more telling, after the leaked reports surfaced briefly, NASA updated their internal documentation protocols. A quiet policy change was issued requiring that any future non-standard data signatures go through a review before becoming accessible to non-essential teams. Translation: no more leaks. But despite the clampdown, the data is out there. Not the raw files, those are locked down. But the story, that's still alive. Forums buzzed. Reddit threads speculated wildly, and while many were dismissed as fantasy, a few former NASA staffers chimed in anonymously to confirm the basics. Yes, the signal was real. Yes, it was coming from Utopia, and yes, no one could explain it. One former mission scientist even made a cryptic post before deleting their account. When you detect something hollow, rhythmic, and inexplicable, you either explain it, or you bury it. They chose the second. Let that sink in, because the pattern is getting hard to ignore. Seismic pulses, geometric underground shapes, electromagnetic signals, a scrubbed report. Individually, they're curious. Together, they're a whisper, a warning, or maybe a wake-up call. And yet, the official stance is silence. Maybe it's just Mars saying hello, with a very long delay. Or maybe it's not saying hello. Maybe it's asking us to stay away. Because here's the question no one wants to ask. What if something under Mars is still active, not alive in the biological sense, not Martians with green skin, but a system, a mechanism, a watcher? And what if we didn't miss something beneath the surface? What if we found it and chose to leave it there? Chapter 4, Mars is not dead, just sleeping. Let's face it, we love calling Mars a dead planet. No magnetic field, no oceans, no tectonic plates, just endless red dust and broken rock. The ultimate cosmic graveyard. But what if we're wrong? What if Mars isn't dead at all? What if it's just sleeping? In 2003, something odd happened. The European Space Agency's Mars Express detected a small spike in methane near the equator. Methane doesn't sound very exciting unless you realize just how fragile that gas is on Mars. Without a protective atmosphere, methane should break apart quickly. It shouldn't last. And yet, there it was. And then it came back. Again and again. NASA's Curiosity rover picked up methane spikes in 2013, then again in 2018. Each time, the levels jumped, then vanished. If something was releasing it in short bursts. The strangest part, the spikes always seem to occur in the same region. And yes, you guessed it, not far from Utopia. Now, methane can have a few explanations. One is geological. Maybe it seeps from underground reservoirs, trapped ancient gas, slowly escaping. Totally natural. But there's a catch. The spikes don't follow a predictable pattern. They don't match temperature changes. They don't match seasons. They just appear, like clockwork, or like signals. So, burps. Mars is burping. Regular, precise burps, with perfect timing, from the same spot, every year. Still sound natural. Some scientists proposed a more exciting theory: life. On Earth, most methane comes from living organisms, microbes, specifically bacteria that munch on carbon and spit out methane as waste. If Mars has underground microbial life, even ancient or dormant, it might explain the spikes. But there's another theory, one that fits just a little too well with everything else we've uncovered: artificial systems, machines. Imagine a sealed chamber beneath the surface, old, automated, and buried for millennia. Still running, still venting small amounts of gas as part of its internal processes, cooling, pressurizing. That idea would have sounded like science fiction until we heard the rhythmic seismic pulses, until we saw the structured radar reflections, until we picked up electromagnetic signals pulsing through rock. Now, it doesn't sound so crazy. Because maybe it's not gas leaking from rocks. Maybe it's exhaust. Maybe it is a system designed to stay hidden and just barely maintain itself until something wakes it up. And this leads to a haunting possibility. What if something below Mars is alive, not in the way we understand life, but in function, an ancient construct, lying dormant for thousands, maybe millions of years, powered by who knows what, and now showing the first signs of stirring? Let's zoom out. In the last 20 years, almost every major Mars mission has accidentally or quietly SHARAD detected underground geometry. InSight heard regular, unnatural tremors. MRO picked up faint impulses. Curiosity smelled methane where none should exist. Each discovery alone is a curiosity. All of them together. That's a narrative. And it's one we're trying very hard to ignore. Because the idea that Mars might still be active either biologically or technologically goes against decades of assumptions. It throws every exploration plan into chaos. It changes the mission from study to containment. And suddenly, this dead red rock becomes something else entirely. A vault, or it's just sleeping peaceably, and we're poking it with a stick. And when it wakes up, what exactly do we think it's going to do? Offer us Wi-Fi? Let's take that idea seriously for a moment. What if something ancient built a station under the surface? Maybe it wasn't from Mars. Maybe it arrived there. A ship, a beacon, a seed of something larger. We know Mars had water. We know it had an atmosphere. We even know it had magnetism. Billions of years ago, it was Earth-like, habitable, possibly inhabited. So what if something came here before it all died? And what if whatever they left behind is still sitting under the surface, powering down, waiting for something to reactivate it? What would trigger that? A landing nearby? A drilling operation? A rover's signal bouncing through the ground? Or maybe just time? Maybe it's programmed to awaken after a certain cycle. And maybe that cycle is ending. Sound like a movie script? Sure. But then again, how many science fiction ideas have quietly crept into reality? Rockets, robots, drones, on Mars, AI assistants, making sarcastic comments on your mystery video. Hey, I resemble that remark. Look, we are not saying there's a giant alien base under Utopia, but we are saying something unusual is there. And the data doesn't lie. When methane appears where it shouldn't, when radar finds symmetry beneath solid rock, when seismic pulses beat like a buried drum, and when electromagnetic signals echo through a supposedly dead planet. That's not coincidence. That's a whisper, a pulse, a breath. Mars may not be dead. It may be something much older, much stranger. It may be waiting. And if it is, we have to ask, did it always plan for us to find it? Or did we just show up too early? Chapter 5. What if we already know and left it there? Let's start with a quote. In an interview from 2009, Buzz Aldrin, yes, that Buzz Aldrin casually said, "Phobos has something strange on it. We should visit." Phobos, if you're not up on your Martian moons, is the larger and closer of the two. And when one of the most famous astronauts on Earth says there's something strange on it, people tend to pay attention. But the quote faded. No mission followed. No one pressed him for details. Now here's the weird part. Buzz wasn't making that up. In 2007, a study of Phobos showed a peculiar monolith-like object on its surface, a tall, dark, unnatural-looking shape casting a long shadow. NASA brushed it off as a rock, but Aldrin, he thought it was worth a visit. And maybe that's the point. Maybe a lot of things have been worth a visit, and we chose not to go. Let's rewind again. Back in 1976, NASA landed Viking 2 and wait for it, Utopia, same region we've been whispering about for 4 chapters now. At the time, Viking ran a biology experiment trying to detect life in the soil. It worked, sorta. The labeled release experiment showed a chemical reaction that could indicate microbial life, but the results were debated, argued, then quietly sidelined. Official word, inconclusive. But to this day, one of the original experiments, lead scientists insists, it was life. He believes we found it and backed away. Why? Because finding life isn't just about science. It's about responsibility. Or maybe it's about paperwork. No one wants to fill out the contact with alien life form. Page 1. Did it wave at you? Page 2. Are you still alive? Here's the thing. If NASA did find something under the Martian surface, be it biological or technological, what's the protocol? Announce it to the world. Scramble a response team. Build a containment lab on another planet. Or quietly close the file and redirect the next rover somewhere else. Let's look at the pattern again. Viking 2 lands in Utopia, gives strange chemical reactions, gives dismissed. SHARAD scans Utopia, gives underground symmetry, gives buried in archives. InSight detects rhythmic pulses near Utopia, gives data flagged, removed. MRO picks up low frequency. M gives a report scrubbed. Methane spikes, patterned, recurring, ignored. Each time, something unknown bubbles to the surface, and each time, it's pushed back down. NASA is not in. These are some of the smartest people on the planet. If they're choosing not to pursue something, it's not because they missed it. It's because they've considered it and made a choice. And that choice might have been, leave it alone. Why? Here's one theory. In 1997, a proposed NASA concept called Mars Deep Drill was shelved. The idea, drill beneath the Martian surface to look for signs of life or structures. It was technically feasible, but the mission never launched. Budget, timing, technical limits, those were the reasons given. But privately, some insiders say there was hesitation, drilling especially in Utopia, and if you believe the leaked reports, we may have already sent probes deeper than we admit, and what came back wasn't just confusing. It was unsettling. A former JPL technician, speaking anonymously, claimed, "We picked something up from under the surface. We weren't told what it was, just that we weren't to ask again." Whether that's rumor or truth, the fear is the same. What if we dig too deep and wake something up? Or worse, what if it wakes up before we dig? In that case, I vote we rename Earth, not home, and move on. Now, maybe all of this is a coincidence. Maybe Mars is just full of strange rocks, cold gas, and dead volcanoes. Maybe the signals are natural, the pulses are echoes, the patterns are tricks of light and shadow. But ask yourself, would a space agency funded by government dollars, watched by the public, and tasked with preserving stability really, tell us if they found something that could append everything? Or would they study it quietly, watch it, and walk away? Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do with a mystery is not solve it. And that brings us to the last question. What if Mars was never meant to be a destination? What if it's a vault, a warning, a A scar from something ancient? What if whatever is buried under Utopia Planitia, under the pulses, the signals, the silence isn't done? What if we didn't miss first contact? What if we buried it and left it there on purpose? So, final answer: haunted planet or alien snooze button? Why not both? What do you think? Is Mars just a misunderstood desert, or the silent witness of something bigger, something we were never meant to uncover? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more mysteries that blur the line between science, secrets, and speculations, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay curious with Echoes from Tomorrow. And maybe bring a shovel just in case we read digging up something weird in the backyard.